Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Lulli. Lulli is a Brazilian romantic comedy that tells the story of a med school student named Lulli who has an attention deficit, so much so that it causes a breakup between her and her boyfriend Diego. She initially reels from this, but eventually recovers with the help of her best friend Vanessa and returns to her studies. During a routine MRI procedure, a technical difficulty occurs and Lulli attempts to investigate it along with Diego. A scary but harmless accident occurs, resulting in Lulli obtaining the power to read anyone's minds through physical contact, and she tries to juggle her school and personal lives following this. The concept behind the movie isn't really anything new, but it had the potential to be a quick, fun, and lighthearted romp buoyed by its premise. Unfortunately, I found it to be slow-paced, boring, and a bit overdramatic at times. There is still some fun to be had, but the characters make it difficult due to their one-note personalities. The main character, Lulli, remained the same person throughout the entire movie. Even after her breakup with Diego and obtaining her mind-reading powers, she never comes to any sort of revelation where she has to transform or learn her lesson about something, aside from her impatience, which, if I'm being honest, was pretty lazily implemented. She's supposed to have difficulty paying attention to people, but this is only addressed a few times throughout the entire movie, and by the end she verbally announces that she's better at doing so. I was always confused about what her priorities were supposed to be. Now, I do think that her character is likable to a certain degree. She has funny lines, a bit of backstory regarding her family upbringing, and a generally good presence on screen, but it's not enough to salvage the movie for me. Her change in attention span brought on by her powers needed more development to make things click. Diego doesn't have much in the way of personality by comparison. He attends the same med school as Lulli does and has some medical issues that come up in the beginning, but it never becomes a focal point in the story until toward the end of it, and throughout the rest of it, he and others coast through classes as per usual. He suffers from amnesia from the same incident that Lulli was involved in, but for some reason he doesn't have any mind-reading powers like she does, which didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. His amnesia was inconsistent as well, so I found it hard to follow along with both of the lead characters. The other characters aren't really worth mentioning. There is a pro volleyball player named Julio who is secretly gay, and it is interesting to see him come to terms with his struggle, but there's no point to it other than a hint of a romance toward the end of the movie, which doesn't add anything in the long run. Everyone else seemed to be associated with the class at the med school, and none of them have anything in the way of memorability. There's some sort of love triangle between Lulli's friend Vanessa and fellow classmates Ricardo and Elena, and there's so little build up for its payoff, I couldn't bring myself to care about it even a little bit. And if you can believe it, there's another implied love triangle of sorts between Lulli, Diego, and their instructor Paula, who Lulli suspects has the hots for Diego. Once again, the build-up is threadbare, stops and starts a lot, and is resolved too easily, which leaves little else for Lulli to find conflict with. This was the main problem that I had with the movie. There are problems that arise, and they're dealt with almost immediately. It feels like it runs out of gas at about the halfway point and just drifts while people go to school, which did not make for an exciting watch. The mind-reading powers Lulli has do make things slightly more interesting. It's funny to see the different ways Lulli tries to make physical contact with people in order to use her abilities, and the random things that pop up in people's heads did get a chuckle out of me a couple times. The humor is quite mild as opposed to other comedies I've seen this year, and to be frank, after seeing something as brash as Don't Look Up, it's nice to see a movie pull back the reins a bit. There's no swear words or anything explicit aside from one sex scene, so the comedy is mostly reliant on the scenarios attached to Lulli's powers, which I appreciate. It's when the movie tries to be more serious that it stumbles a lot more. There's a family angle explored on Diego's side where he has a bad relationship with his father, who also happens to be a doctor, and he only appears in two scenes, the first of which is an argument and the other being where they forgive each other. The movie has a scatterbrained approach when it comes to addressing its story. Multiple threads and beats are introduced, forgotten about, suddenly remembered, and then abruptly resolved. The flow of the story is uneven, which, as with Lulli, made it hard for me to pay attention. And this is related to another thing I took issue with. The movie is so boring to watch. It largely consists of Lulli being lovey-dovey with Diego following his amnesia as if nothing happened, which as a side note is just plain creepy, and Lulli will have quirky conversations with her friends. That's it. The movie has its heart in the right place when it comes to its story, but doesn't do enough in the 80-minute or so runtime that it plays out. It's lacking in substance beyond the mild amusement that comes with Lulli's powers. And when there is some attempt to add depth, it comes off more as confusing than anything else. Lulli has an uncanny ability to magically diagnose people's illnesses seemingly from just looking at them, and I didn't understand how she was able to come to such conclusions. There are a few times where she reads people's minds and is able to get a better idea of their symptoms in doing so, which is good because it strengthens the main selling point of the story, but most of these instances occur within bits of montages that only last a few seconds each. One element that frustrated me in its execution was the inclusion of Oscar, who's one of the patients at the school where Lulli studies. The movie makes him out to be an important character simply because his eyes are like Lulli's father, but the audience is never introduced to her father at any point, so the emotional connection falls flat right from the get-go and becomes more annoying the longer it's drawn out. It's a shame that the story ended up being so disappointing because I think the framework is there for a solid movie. There are some heartwarming moments in it, especially with Lulli's mother, and the cinematography showcasing Brazil's scenery is fantastic. I don't think I've seen a Brazilian movie that didn't have beautiful cinematography. Overall, Lulli is a boring romantic comedy that does have some charm, but suffers from uneven pacing, undeveloped characters, and unexplained issues in its narrative. If you like romantic comedies and want to watch a quick one that has a bare basics plot and concept behind it, I suppose you could do worse than this, but for anyone like me expecting more from it, you'll likely end up disappointed. It's oddly fitting for a movie like this to have mind reading as its key attraction, because I could predict just about everything that was going to happen in it. While there is some heart to it, it approaches its story with little enthusiasm, which left me feeling just as empty when it was all said and done. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Lulli. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the American psychological drama, The Lost Daughter. Bye bye!